Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, because we all love game nights with our family and friends. But when you play solo games, then every night can be a game night. Check us out along with other great podcasts at dicetowernetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 99. 2 design contests, Solitaire Print and Play, and GenCant 2018. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to the Every Night is Game Night podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. It is episode 99, the penultimate episode to 100, and I am really excited about this episode that we're going to bring to you. We are going to talk about 2 different design contests. I love these. The reason I love them is because there are 2 contests. I'm talking about the Solitaire Print and Play contest for 2018 on Board Game Geek, and also the recently completed GenCant contest run with Button Shy Games. These are 2 contests that really speak to how awesome this game industry is, how low the barrier is if you out there want to be a game designer and you want to kind of try your hand at really making something, and also just a whole repository of really fun games, that are not in the hotness, but they're really fun and they're really interesting, and we're going to talk to you about a bunch of them later in this episode with a couple of interviews. I'm really excited to get to the episode, but you know how we roll here on Every Night is Game Night. But first, we have to get to Liz. Liz is going to hit us up with another Kickstarter. This one should be pretty familiar one to you guys, so hold on, check it out.
Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here to encourage your Every Night is Game Night acquisition disorder. This week, I want to talk about Dungeon Alliance, which is coming back to Kickstarter. Dungeon Alliance is a puzzly dungeon crawling game in which you control a team of 4 heroes using only 1 deck of cards. The game has deck building and tactical combat elements that make it a lot of fun. I positively reviewed the base game on my own site, Beyond Solitaire. If you did not participate in the original Kickstarter, you can pick up the base game and expansion from the first campaign, as well as the new development in Dungeon Alliance gameplay, Adventure Packs. If you do have the base game already, you'll be looking to add Adventure Packs. The Adventure Packs add narrative story arcs to the game, as you play in campaign mode and work through tougher dungeon challenges. The Adventure Packs can be used during solo, co-op, and competitive play, so no one's going to be left out. But I found the game to be very enjoyable solo, and that's what I'll be using my Adventure Packs for. I am excited that there will be new content for Dungeon Alliance, and I absolutely intend to back this project myself. Happy gaming.
All right. So yes, that was Dungeon Alliance. It is back on Kickstarter for a 2nd edition and an expansion. We did review Dungeon Alliance here. Yeah, I know I wasn't the hugest fan of it, but I did respect what it's trying to do. So if I absolutely, if that's something that's interesting to you, then go ahead and give that project a look. All right. So let's get to the meat of the episode. Like I said, we are going to have 2 interviews for you. The first is with Chris Hansen, who runs the Solitaire Print and Play contest. The second is with a bunch of folks who are involved with this year's GenCant Button Shy contest. That would be Jason Tagmire, founder and CEO of Button Shy Games, as well as the winners of that contest. Yes, multiple winners. So it's a big call, a lot going on. But I wanted to set the scene and share with you why I was so excited for this episode in particular. So Anthony and I could get away with just talking about the hotness, what hit our tables, what was interesting to us, and we definitely do a lot of that, and we are about to embark upon a whole slew of reviews for GenCant games, so believe you me, that is important to us as well. But I love that this gaming hobby, this gaming industry is so much more than that. There is a lot going on kind of under all of that. Designers, publishers reaching out, reaching into the corners of the hobby to search out the quirky stuff, as Zev Schlosinger has been known to say, quirky is cool, to get people's creativity, get people designing people who maybe didn't think that they could be designers, but then they have this really easy, low barrier to entry, and they say, whoa, I'm going to give this a try, and they realize they like it. Or maybe you are a collector and you have a wall full of games that are just sitting there, and you're looking for something just really different and really off the wall, and you're willing to be a little bit adventurous, and you're willing to be a part of a community. So in both of these cases, there was a lot of fan interaction in terms of, what's being posted, what's being played, how can we make this better, play testing, all that kind of stuff. There is so much that goes on under just the giant boxes of goodness that we get every day. So I'm so happy to bring this episode. I'm just so happy in particular. It's episode 99. It's almost 100. It's been a long and really fun road getting here, and I'm just going to blame it on that, my level of excitement. So, all right, that's enough of the preamble. Here we go. All right, Jason here, and I have Mr. Chris Hansen on the line. Chris is the person who is running the Solitaire Print and Play contest for 2018, now on Board Game Geek. Welcome back to the show, Chris.
Thank you very much, Jason. It's great to be back.
All right, last year we had a big episode. We dedicated the entire thing to the Print and Play contest. It was our first time, so we wanted to kind of cover a lot of ground. We also had Albert on here. He snuck on there. He threw Anthony in the closet and snuck on the episode to help me out. We also had John Keane, who was here last year. The winner of the contest was Black Sonata, which got kickstarted. I was really shocked to see that. Well, not shocked, but I'm like, cool. People are noticing this thing. This contest is really growing.
Yeah, very successfully kickstarted as well.
I know that thing. It kind of smashed its funding goal, and went on to do all sorts of different stuff. So that was really cool. So yes, this you're becoming a bigger and bigger deal, sir. You might be a kingmaker in the board gaming scene.
The contest is I think it's attracting a little bit more notice from outside the usual BGG contest community. There was a year or two ago, Deep Space D6 got successfully kickstarted, and I think that game won second or third prize overall. And then, of course, Black Sonata did very well last year. So it's I would never want to tell anyone this is like your guarantee to getting published, but
right.
Getting a game in this contest and beating out so much competition, it doesn't hurt.
There was also Manuel Correa had Agent Decker, which became Blight Chronicles, which was also kickstarted. Manuel has released a couple of games, one of which Multi-Universum we're going to talk about pretty soon on the pod. Morton was a contest entrant in the first year. Morten Monrad Pedersen, if you want to go check out his blog, Thematic Solitaires for the Spare Time Challenge, which is a blog we've mentioned a couple of times on the show, he has designer interviews, and he talks a lot, very openly, very warmly about this contest as his kind of one of the things that got him going, and eventually he got together with his buddies and also people who've designed in the context, Lines Hutter, David Studley, formed the Automa Factory and are bringing more solo content to you. So, seriously, this is a contest you guys should be paying attention to if you are not already. Let's just for those who do not know, who did not listen to the episode last year, this is the first time they're hearing about Print and Play, or this design contest, maybe just go really quickly through the basics of what you're trying to do and how long you've been doing it.
Sure. So this the contest started in 2011, very casually, just kind of as a fun side project to have a fun little competition for who could design the best solitaire board game. And as we've talked about a little bit, it's grown a lot since then. So we're in our 8th year of doing this contest. It's an annual event, happens every summer. And basically, so the Print and Play game, if you're not familiar with it, it's just a game that all of the components are available in files, like a PDF file or a Word document, something like that. You download it off the internet and print it in your home printer. Sometimes that's all you have to do. You just print it and you're ready to go. Other times you have to cut up cards or cut up tiles or something for the game components. Sometimes you need to grab your own cubes or dice, but all of the special game components and rules are available online. Everything in this contest is free for people to download and play. And it was just a way to encourage solitaire, focused board games. I thought there were a lot of games that, were multiplayer that had a solitaire option. Sometimes it felt a little tacked on, and there especially 8 years ago, there was not as many solitaire options as there are today. So part of this contest was just to encourage more solitaire development. And everything you described, I think it's achieving that goal, or at least helping to achieve that goal.
And in terms of the growth that you're mentioning, so you started the contest 8 years ago, and we talked about the different people who have been there. Also Todd Sanders, who is becoming a more and more well-known name, just released his first app game, which is the Draugr. He had a couple of entries into the contest too. So we're talking, we're not a who's who over here, but really people who are passionate, who are talented, and putting out really great stuff for you to enjoy. This year, I see, and the number you have posted is 61. You probably haven't even updated that yet. But yeah, as of whatever it was earlier this morning or last night, it was 61 games and more to come.
Yeah, there was a 61, and I just noticed, I got on tonight after getting off work, that there were 2 or 3 more games in the thread that were added. So I've got to update that list, but I think we're probably up to 63 or 64 now.
Mm-hmm. And, if people have in their minds, oh, these are homemade games, and homemade games are by definition, worse or of lesser quality or anything. At the very least, these games are getting peer reviewed, and that's a very essential part of the contest, which is, you post your games. It isn't just Chris there playing them. I don't think you have time for that.
I wish I did. I've always wished that I could play more of them. But it is really challenging for any one person to get through. Even before we had 61 games in the contest, I don't think I've ever managed to play every single game in a year.
Yeah, and I gotta say, there are a whole bunch of folks to play test and to peer review. Like, these are, if you want to put it that way, these are peer reviewed games. And if they're not going to hack it, then people are going to talk about it, and it's just going to come down. So on some level, you're going to get some kind of, higher level of quality than just going to the side of the room and designing your own game. And not only that, so I'm noticing, because I see if you look on the page says total entries and everything. There's also at this little section called games with digital variants, which I find wow. The people are, not only are they designing games, they're going the length of putting their games on Vassal or on Tabletop Simulator. That is that new, or what is up with that?
It's kind of the last 2 or 3 years, it's really picked up. At various points, we've had people who have basically volunteered their time to come in and make digital versions of games for the designers in the contest. And they've just, maybe they have some computer skills or some development skills, and they've come in and done it just for free, just for fun. Other designers kind of like the challenge of doing it themselves as well. So it is, it's really picked up recently in the last few years. So if you really did not want to do, the actual cutting of components or, the print part of print and play, there are some options. Not every game is going to have a digital option. It's up to the designer or a volunteer maybe to create one, but there are options. There's a lot of games that do have them.
Yeah, to be clear, we're talking about 5-6 games out of 61. That's not a huge amount, but it's enough. And there's some of the more interesting titles are up there too. So what you do is you go on Tabletop Simulator, play a couple of these games, then you enter the community without having wasted any of your ink, or you picked up your scissor, and you can just hit the ground running. And maybe during the conversations, you can get more involved in the contest, which is kind of what, aside from indulging people's creativity, forming that community, I imagine is what this is all about.
Yeah, and one of the things I love about this contest, and you've kind of alluded to it, but I think if a designer just creates a print and play game and adds it to Board Game Geek or sticks it out on the internet, it can be kind of hard to find. It can be kind of, lost. There's 100,000 games on Board Game Geek or something. It's really hard to stand out. And this contest, at least for, the months that it runs, really a lot of people plan on this and come in to play test. And, there are people who participate every year who don't design any games. They just come in and play the games that other people have and provide feedback. So it's a really good way, and not just the solitaire contest. There's lots of design contests on Board Game Geek, and these events really bring together the designers and play testers in a way that I haven't seen, it worked to as a great as effect as it has here. It's a really nice feature. The contest is about who can design the best game, but even if you don't win the contest, getting that play testing feedback from people all over the world is huge. I think that's better than any prize that the contest gives.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to be clear, there's a lot of contests, and if you don't know what we're talking about, let us level up your BGG knowledge. Go to the forums page. I had to learn this. I did not learn this the first time. So you go to the forums tab, you press forums, and then you scroll down a bit, and you go to the Board Game Design subfolder, and then there's Design Contest within Board Game Design. And, to your credit, I mean, you always have the most thumbs in this contest. It's always floating up to the top of the chart. Not like you have to bump it. Bump the thing or anything. It's easy to find. So even though there are a lot of contests on BGG, this one still stands out as one that's just especially has a lot of things going for it, a lot of big community and all that kind of stuff.
The solitaire contest is really, it's one of the popular ones, although, there's, depending on what you want, I think there's people who love the 2-player contest or the war game contest. The solitaire contest definitely has a good crowd though.
All right, so let's get into the actual contest itself. As usual, you have a bajillion categories. You add more every year.
I know.
Like we talked about it last year. You try to take some away and people get mad. It's like, all right. Soon everybody's going to have a prize in some contest or anything. And there are different kinds of categories. You got overall game, artwork and graphic design, that kind of stuff. Maybe a new designer, new solo designer. You have another, I don't know if this was a category last year, the best airline seat tray game.
Yeah, it's basically a game designed to play in a small, compact space. It doesn't necessarily have to be on an airline tray, but if you're ever in a place where you don't have a lot of room to play, and an airline seat is a great example, a game that can actually fit in that environment is a pretty nice thing to have sometimes.
Best online at GenCant game. Just waiting for that hot game that is probably not going to be there. Okay, so you also have the mechanisms. So if you guys are looking for particular experiences, work placement, area control, story driven, are there any categories that you look forward to in particular? Are there any kind of like categories tend to be hot and draw a lot of attention, or is it like mostly diffuse among the different areas?
So I'm a big fan of war games. If I'm when I'm playing games in the contest, I play a big variety of the entries. But if I'm playing a game just for my own enjoyment, I oftentimes will reach for a war game. So I always have that category as part of the contest. It's one that I really enjoy and look forward to seeing entries on.
Mm-hmm. And is there like, for in general, people are designers drawn to a certain type? Are they drawn to adventure? Are they drawn to puzzlers? What is there one category that's hotter than others?
That has varied from year to year. This year, it is, I think without a doubt, it's roll and write games, which is a new category. I've never done it before, and this year I think there's 10 or 11 games that are in that category. And these games are, by the way, for people that don't want to have to cut things, you just print the form. I don't think any of them require any cutting or very minimal cutting. But you basically just print, you grab some dice, and you've got one of these games that it's definitely one of the hot trends at the moment. I'm seeing a lot of roll and write games, even outside of the contest.
I don't get it. I don't get it. We had a whole episode. So this is to be episode 99. 98 was roll and write games. Anthony shared about 3 of them. Our friend Glenn has a Facebook group dedicated to roll and write games. And now there's all these, someone's going to have to explain it to me. That's not going to be a subject for this pod, but so yeah, I definitely noticed the same thing. A lot of roll and write games. There's always storytelling games. There's a game on here called Guildhaven City, and I'm like, oh, Gloomhaven City? Oh no. Reading too fast. I might want to address that name. Maybe they did that on purpose so that they can get extra eyeballs. It's a comic book. So
Yeah.
yeah, sure. I mean, that's another trend in gaming. We're also going to review Choose Your Own Adventure and the graphic novel Adventures. I mean, why not? I mean, this is another valid way to get some gaming in. What else has kind of leapt out at you? I know you don't. I know you don't have like a favorite right now. We were talking before the call. You're like, you just have no idea. But like, I mean, is there anything, or at least a couple of things that may jump out to you that maybe some listeners should look forward to?
There's a sequel to a game that came out last year. I know we just barely talked about Roll and Write, but there's a game called Grazing Sheep, which is the kind of the follow-up to Raging Bulls, which, as far as Roll and Write goes, I really, really enjoyed. Was that one you talked about last week? I didn't hear the episode.
We talked about, well, let's see, Gone Shown Clever because of the whole Spiel thing, and God, there was a couple of other ones. I don't think we talked about that one, though, but yeah, it's a popular one.
Yeah. And then there's another game that I've enjoyed called The Cleaner, and it is this setting where you're part of the criminal underworld, but your job is to go to the crime scenes before the police get there and clean up all the evidence, so that the criminals don't get caught. You're cleaning up the evidence before the police can come. I thought that was kind of an interesting twist. It almost reminded me of like the John Wick world where there's this whole criminal enterprise. Besides just the people that go out and do the killing, there's the people that come in and do the mopping after the killing. So I thought that was kind of an interesting theme. I didn't think I'd seen anything like that in the contest before.
And that one is on Tabletop Simulator, so if you don't want to print that out, that one also Evolution Island looks like a pretty good one. There's a couple of them that I might take a look at. One that I'm really curious about. I have no idea if it's any good or not, but apparently someone made Solitaire Legacy, which is a straight up Solitaire, but apparently there is changing and campaign modes. Like, right, let's figure this out.
Which I find that interesting to have, a print and play game. Like I've always had a little bit of I don't want to go spend all that money on Pandemic Legacy and then rip it apart and put stickers on it and whatnot. So the print and play aspect kind of makes it interesting of like, if I want to start over from scratch or something, I can reprint the game. Although I know you probably don't want to restart over from scratch once you played through, but I thought it was kind of interesting to have a print and play option.
All right, so I think we'll cover it for now. I mean, the contest is going on right now. It is, as the episode drops, it is August 10th. We're recording on the 7th, so there's not too much of a divide there. Talk about, when the contest is over, how people can contribute, all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, we're if you'd like to be a designer in the contest, if you have some ideas and you're looking for a good place to get feedback, contest is still accepting entries. We're just making assignments for people who want to volunteer, and that's something we didn't really talk about, but we open it up for people who want to volunteer to have games assigned, because I think there's games that kind of rise to the top, like that attract a lot of attention, and then from the more established names, like if someone like Todd Sanders comes in, who's been published and had a lot of success, he doesn't have a lot of trouble getting people interested in playing his game. But a brand new designer that's still breaking in, it doesn't get as much attention in the contest. So I've actually started up a program where people can volunteer to be assigned games to play from those that haven't got as many playtesters or as much feedback online. I think right around the time the episode drops is when I was going to make those assignments. But even if you miss that, you can still sign up, or still jump in and play games. I keep track of the amount of feedback the games have gotten, so that I can recommend to people, go try this game, or help provide feedback to this designer. So that's all available. The contest is going to wrap up sometime around the end of September. We'll do the final voting toward the end of the month of September. So we still have another month and a couple of weeks of this contest running.
All right. So you have about 6-7 weeks to design or get involved or just check it out, and hop on Tabletop Simulator, just open up the forum page and see what the next, your next Kickstarter really, right? Next thing. Before it even gets launched on Kickstarter. So thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for running the show. Thank you for all the printing that you do, all the money you spend on ink, all the all the organizing.
That is a real amount of money.
That is a non-trivial amount of money. That's right. Yeah, thanks.
I say the games are free, but there are costs involved.
Nothing's free. Nothing's free. So thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. It's great being on the show. Thank you again.
Oh my goodness, we have the biggest call that I have ever attempted on the EU episode 100. We're going to go big or go home. We are starting off with coverage of GenCant 2018 Button Shy contest. So we have a grand total of 4 other people on this call. I'm just going to introduce them real fast before the call falls apart. Trying to get through this. Okay, so we're going to get into what GenCant is in a second, but I want to introduce the folks that are on the call. First of all, we have the founder and CEO of Button Shy Games. He has been on the show before. Welcome back to Jason Tagmire.
Hello.
All right. So he is the man, the brainchild behind the GenCant Button Shy contest that just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. And we have 2 winners. The 2 games were so good that they just nominated them both. And we'll go into a little bit about how that happened in a second. But let's introduce them first. First, we have ladies first. We have Elizabeth Hargrave, who is the designer of the 2 to 4 player I Split You Choose game, Tussie Mussie. Welcome to the show.
Hey there.
We also have Corry Damey, hailing from nowhere, USA, in the middle of Idaho, the designer of Seasons of Rice, a tile laying game. Welcome to the show, Corry.
Hi.
See, I'm from New York City, so I'm fascinated by people who live in Idaho. So sorry for jumping on that one. And last, so just as a full disclosure thing, so Jason was the primary person put everything together. He was the main judge and everything. Put out the call for people to help judge the contest. I was one of those judges, as well as the person who is the last person on the call. He is the designer of Button Shy's next game, Liberation, and also my personal friend, if we're going to be full disclosure here. It is Jon Simantov. Welcome to the show, Jon.
Hey, good to be here.
All right. Everybody sounds great. We are ready to roll. Cool. So first we're going to start with Jason. Okay. So GenCant, Button Shy, 18 card contest. Maybe you can give us a little bit of the background of the contest and how it got paired up with GenCant along the way.
Okay, so we have done every year we've done an 18 card contest. Generally, we're looking for new games, but there have been cash prizes and things like that. But we've always pulled, 5, 6, 7 games out of them to publish over the next year, and it's been a great way to get submissions. Our probably best known submission was Circle the Wagons, which was our top selling game in 2018 and most of 2017. And we've done it since. We've done it in 2016, 17, and now 18. We were going to do a contest with this crazy idea, and I was so far behind on it, and Suzanne Sheldon from GenCant contacted me and said, would you want to do a shared contest for GenCant? And I was like, sure. How much time do we have? And she's like, none. We have 2 months. There's a week to review games and all. And I was just like, absolutely, we're going to do it, because we were behind on ours. Our idea was going to be, it had to be fantasy themed. It was solo only, 2-player only, 2 to 4 player only, 3 different variations, and it was a video series where we put 2 games head to head, and not in a battle way where we look at what's good and bad. We just look at what's good about them and discuss them, and the one of them's going to move forward, and it just keeps going. That was so far behind in our planning that we jumped on this opportunity with Suzanne, and it was great because we got 108 entries and some really, really good games out of it.
Yeah, so just to fast forward the story a little bit, I was lucky to be part. Thank you very much for inviting me, Jason, and to Jon as well. We were all part of a kind of this day of judging. So we went to a Mexican restaurant, we caught up some games and everything, and we played our faces off. Maybe we played, I think, the top 15 or 20 games and everything. All 18 cards. and nothing with extra components or anything like that. These are the two games that rose to the top. The judging ended up a particular way, right, Jason?
Yeah, we basically started with all internal Button Shy people, as well as some on Suzanne's side and Suzanne, and we went through feedback forums, watched videos, and everything else, and then we planned to play them all, or as many as we could, and we started out with a dozen people in the Philadelphia area ready to play, and as the summer moved on and vacations crept up and everything else, we ended up with nobody from the Philadelphia area. Eventually, Mike Mullins. John from California and Jason from New York. Somehow that all worked out.
And the winners were so the way the winners worked out was, I think you had come up with a final top 3, and then Suzanne came up with a final top 3.
Yep, we were kicking around our top 10s for a while, and then we were playing on our own, and then we knocked it down to our top 3s, which 2 of them matched up perfectly, and it was Tussie Mussie and Seasons of Rice, and the other one was Seasons of Rice and Tussie Mussie. So we said, let's just go ahead and name them both as winners, because it really was Button Shy and GenCant coming together for this decision, and it met really well with our top 2s. So congratulations to both of you, and they both won.
All right, very cool. So the question for the designers. So as the winners, obviously these are excellent games. We'll get to them in a second. But maybe you guys can talk about the process of designing within 18 cards. So you guys managed to design full games. These games are, as good as anything that you'll find in retail on the filler or shorter end of things. No extra components, no tokens, no whatever else. Maybe talk a little bit about, as designers, was that constraining? Was that challenging? How did you experience that?
Yeah, it was constraining, but I think in a good way. I mean, game design can be so wide open, right? And having 18 cards limits you and sort of forces you to be elegant and simple. But I came at it sort of with the goal of, okay, how within those 18 cards, how can I still have there be interesting decisions and have those decisions feel different from game to game? And I think that's what a lot of the Button Shy titles do in one way or the other. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. With Tussie Mussie, it's sort of a combination of hidden information and the way that your little bouquet of cards collects over the game, so that different things sort of score very differently depending on what you've already got in your hand. But other folks milk that in very different directions.
You have an I split, you choose kind of back and forth card game. Corry, you went the tile laying route, which is, I think it's super cool that, 18 cards, you can have completely different game experiences. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how Seasons of Rice came together.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Seasons of Rice came together. It started out with kind of the theme. I wanted to do something in line with something that I was personally passionate about, something that I could really hold on to and see from the beginning to the end. And I think as a budding game designer, I wanted to do something grandiose and really big. Lots of components, beautiful artwork, and I was just like, I can't do this. My brain can't handle it. And so I was trying to just take anything that was kind of living outside of my brain that would help me kind of get there to the end. And so this particular game design, I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna do 18 cards, and I'm not gonna add anything. I'm not gonna make it quote unquote better by putting things in, but only kind of streamline it and keep it as simple as possible. So yeah, that's sort of what I started to do. I kind of put out to a couple of contests just to get in front of people and see what their thoughts were. And so I was kind of off to the races with the blind play testing. And the feedback was really positive.
You had entered the Board Game Design Lab contest, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And were you the ultimate winner?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew I saw that from somewhere. That's awesome. You're on a roll there with that Seasons of Rice. Not Spirits of the Rice Patty. As I learned.
Right. Some people would be very angry. or slightly upset.
All right. And this was for Elizabeth and for Corry. This was it like your first design or maybe second or third? How far along in the process was the 18 card game submission?
I'll let you go, Elizabeth.
So I have one game that is signed but not announced yet that has 170 cards.
Whoa!
Yikes.
Tagmire's not touching that one.
A few others that I'm sort of working on. And honestly, I started working on this as soon as I heard about the GenCant contest. I wasn't already working on it. So it just seemed like a fun little exercise.
There's a pro. Yeah, mine has been in the works for a little while, and I thought that as soon as the GenCant Button Shy contest popped up, it's like, I think that this might actually work. Does happen to be 18 cards. So yeah, something that I haven't told you, Jason, but I was like, I really, really want to pitch this to Button Shy. I hope that it's good enough.
Awesome.
Well, it's funny because the contests have now become the best way to pitch to Button Shy. And it's not only because, we get a whole bunch of time or whatever. It's because I have other eyes on it, because I see something and I like somebody and I'm like, yeah, we'll do that game. And I need this batch of other people to be like, wait a second, maybe you shouldn't do that one. And if you're just too nice and I'm too, it just yeah. So the contests have been awesome for that.
So a pro tip just for you guys, if you're thinking of doing a Button Shy game, if you have a trick-taking game, make sure it's during the contest. Because if you just give a trick-taking game to Jason, he'll have no idea what to do with it.
Yeah, trick-taking is my, it's my least favorite anything. And it's not so much playing a trick-taking game, because you could have me play one and not tell me it's a trick-taking game and I'll be okay with it. But it's if you lead with, this is a trick-taking game, blah blah blah, I tune out, and I think it's just because it's so dry and it doesn't suck me in before it jumps with everybody else, and I don't know. But there was a trick taking game in the contest, and it was our number 3, so the contests work.
That's true. Okay, so let's go into the 2 individual games. Tussie Mussie, let's start there. So Tussie Mussie, tell us a bit specifically about. Because it's going to get released, it's going to get published. So maybe you could give us a little bit of a preview of what we're in store for and what kind of experience we can get.
Sure. So the name Tussie Mussie comes from the theme. So in Victorian England, there was this fad where people started assigning meanings to lots of different flowers, and which I guess has gone on for millennia, but it really became a thing, and people were like publishing whole dictionaries about it. I'm not sure how that came to my attention. There was a novel a few years ago that came out that was sort of based on the concept as well. But anyway, so when I heard about the contest, I was kind of looking over the list of random game ideas that I keep, and this jumped out as one that might lend itself. So that's the theme. There's 18 cards with flowers on them, and they each have their Victorian meaning on the bottom, and you're offering 2 flower cards to the person next to you on your turn, and one's face up and one's face down. So you get to pick which is face up and which is face down, and then they have to decide which one they want to keep. Mm-hmm. They only know what one of them is. And then you get the one that they didn't pick back. And then each of the cards has a different way that it scores, but there's some set collection of different colors. There's some straight up points. There's all kinds of different ways that the cards interact. And so different cards might be very, very, very valuable in different ways to different people. And you just go around the table a couple times giving each other flowers until you see what everyone ended up with.
And just between us, when I watched this, I said, that is my winner, my personal winner. And everyone after that had to suffer that I already picked my winner. But thankfully, everybody else from the Button Shy and GenCant side validated my decision there.
So Jason knew it was his winner, so he didn't bother testing it. John and I, we played a couple of games. Now I know. I didn't even realize, like, I didn't need to play that.
No, after you guys left, me and Mike Mullins played a couple more times.
Oh, there you go. So John and I played, and we played a couple times, right, John?
Yeah, we did.
Maybe just in a couple of words, because we played a bunch of games. Like, we played a ton of, like, two-player, like, these light games. What did Tussie Mussie do right, or maybe what did some of the other games kind of miss the mark on, if you could put your finger on it?
So I think my favorite thing about Tussie Mussie is it's my favorite thing about a number of Button Shy games, which is that a lot of the game happens between you and the other player, and the cards are just a way for that to happen. So, deciding what cards you're going to offer, what you're going to offer face down or face up. Then when you look at the cards being offered to you, you think, oh, they're giving me this face up. Does that mean they want the face down one? Is the face down one better? Is it worse? That's kind of where, to me, the interesting decisions come from. And I really like that aspect of it. It's all about, the players and not just the game.
Yeah, I think everybody at the table who judged would agree with this. The games we liked the least were the games where most of the game was in the cards. So, like, they would pack information on the cards. Like, we saw that one, I don't want to call out any particular game, but there were some games that had symbology coming out of its wazoo. Yeah. And we could barely penetrate it.
There was a game that I loved from a concept standpoint that had, unbelievable amount of text. And we sat there and actually, worked on how we would develop it into a game if we cut the cards in half and then almost cut them in half again because there was so much on there. But we really did like where it was coming from.
I will say there was a solo-only game that had a lot of text. And for solo, I kind of liked that because that's the story. Like, the card text is the story. But for, a 2+ player game, the story is the game that you're playing. It's not necessarily the cards.
Right. Like, the more you can kind of put stuff above the table and put it in the interactions, the better off you'll be in terms of, appealing to, imagine a bunch of guys that, two of whom just drove in from New York City and are about to drive back same day. Jason Tagmire has, his cutting board and, a zillion games. There's not going to be a lot of time to penetrate.
So you just called me out on being completely unprepared and not bringing cut games to the session. I brought the cutting board and a whole bunch of paper and some sleeves.
You printed it. Worked.
Yeah, I did print it.
Sometimes multiple times. So for Seasons of Rice, there was a little bit of an inside joke that, a game like Seasons of Rice, it's a tile lay game. I'll let you describe it in a second, but it was swimming a little bit uphill for us because that's a route that a lot of games take, is the tile laying. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the game, and then we can get into how it was able to differentiate itself.
So Seasons of Rice is it's a tile laying game set in Cambodia, and you are Cambodian rice farmers, just cultivating and harvesting these paddies. You're just growing this beautiful landscape over the course of 2 drafting phases. One's called the wet season, and it's called a number of things. There's the monsoon season or the rainy season, but the wet season and then the second season just has one name there. It's dry, just the dry season. And so thematically, the wet season kind of represents an abundance of choices and all these different cards that you can choose from because there's plenty of rain and there's the crops are flourishing. And in Cambodia, that takes over the course of 8 to 9 months, and it yields a ton of rice. But then during the dry season, it only takes, I think, about 3 months, around that amount of time, and it's a little bit more scarce. And so the communal dry season row that players will be playing into during the wet season kind of represents that scarcity of resources. And so, yeah, once you've played all the cards into your landscape, that's the end of the game. You count up, and then however each player at the beginning has these ancestors. There we go. There's a word. They have these ancestors that kind of guide their strategy a little bit and allows them to differentiate themselves from their opponents by maybe scoring based on the size of patties or if they're able to not lose points for buffalo that are wandering outside of their patties, doing nothing. So and then on the flip side of each of those cards, there's a kind of like a variable player ability.
I think, John, this was another game that we played as well. I like the two phases that there was that, and it's funny how hearing you like talk about there was like a wet season and dry season. That was like a whole thing in your head. And me and John playing it, we're not like, we're talking about Cambodian fertility or anything like that. but it kind of the two phases felt very different. And you ended up getting to a pretty decent point. I think our scores were tight. John, maybe talk about this in reference to some of the other card laying games that we played, and what stood out about this to you.
So Seasons of Rice had one of the things that I know Jason has made it a point of including in a lot of the button shy games he puts out, which is that whole variable scoring condition thing. It's great. So that's part of what I liked about the game is, each player has kind of a slightly different tweak to their scoring that they have for the whole game. So they kind of, tailors how they play. But I think the really neat thing about this game is since the tiles themselves are kind of diagonal, then even just fitting the cards, like to, lining up the tiles and lining up everything is kind of an interesting, like, tactile puzzle. And so when you're putting a card down, it's not like in some other games where you just lay down a card or lay down some tiles and everything is fine, and then you just kind of look at what the area looks like. Here, it's interesting, like, will this even fit in this spot? Will these, lines connect? How do I orient the card? And I thought that kind of puzzly aspect of it was really cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Because like I would think that I had like an awesome like patty, like I had 5 squares and it's empty. My character I need scores on empty things or whatever. Or I have like that ancestor, and then I did it wrong, and I scored nothing. And I didn't. I usually get frustrated by that kind of failure, but for whatever reason, it was inviting. Like it invited me to get better as opposed to just kind of beating me down. So I think that was a really neat trick. Yeah. Cool. That was good.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to jump in. A lot of the tiling stuff that we got was like circle the wagons, but, and then there was a but it wasn't always a good thing. Sometimes it was circle the wagons, but without the draft. Circle the wagons, but more competitive, but it never like really was circle the wagons, but it does this new thing that's great and special. And this one didn't fit the circle the wagons but because there were like 7 different butts. So it's really just like, if you like circle the wagons and this part of it, they share this little tiny bit, but the rest of it is all special and unique. So it really stood out from all the other tiling stuff.
All right, very cool. So we're going to wrap it up here, but this is definitely not the last we're going to hear from the folks in this call. You are actually going to hear from John and Jason. We are going to release a preview series of John's new game, Liberation, that is going to come out on Kickstarter very, very soon. So we'll definitely kind of hold off for that. But maybe Elizabeth and Corry, ladies first. Elizabeth, maybe tell us what you have in store. You have a 107 card game coming up, and I think I remember you had like a roll and write design. I mean, is this have you got the fever? Is this more game designs coming from you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I, unfortunately I can't talk about the 170 card game, but, but stay tuned and hopefully some of the other stuff I'm working on. Yeah, I've got a game about foxes and one about mushrooms that I'm trying to hammer out. So hopefully those will be coming down the pike as well.
What's the best way to reach you?
For board game stuff, I am on Twitter at Liz Hargrave, so the first 4 letters of my name. I usually stick with Elizabeth, but spelling out my whole name is just too much.
For Twitter, anyway. What about you, Corry? What do you have next in terms of game design?
Oh, man. I've really fallen in love with the constraints of having 18 cards, and because this is literally my first game, taking it from beginning to almost the end. I kind of want to keep that constraint and just kind of focus on that streamline aspect of designing. So yeah, I hope to maybe even continue doing more games along this theme. Maybe even picking up some old designs that I have that aren't Cambodian themed. So yeah, I don't have anything on the horizon just yet. Just a lot of ideas. So
you're gonna make that big game with the beautiful artwork and all the pieces.
Oh yeah, there you go. Big game.
There you go.
All the pieces.
All the pieces. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. That is going to do it for another episode of Every Night is Game Night. Once again, thank you all so much for joining us. This is the last episode before episode 100. We have a couple of things planned for that one. Liz will be around. It'll be the first time that Anthony, Liz, and I will be together on the same pod. Yes, Liz and Anthony can be in the same place. I know they have not appeared on the show together, even though Liz has been a part of our little family here for a while now. But yeah, we got together and we had a little bit of fun. So we hope that you enjoy episode 100, and we hope you stick around and join our community. Keep on listening to the podcast. Keep on giving us feedback. Yes, we are open to any ideas for future episodes, for games, or if you just want to be on the podcast, really, like you just heard like 6-7 people that came on the pod, new designers, folks just like, you and me, that are just gamers, and we love talking about this stuff. So if you want to pop on the show, you have an idea, or just, you want to, be in the forums, be in Facebook. We do have a Facebook group. You want to hit us up on Twitter, ENGN_podcast. Please, let's continue the conversation anywhere that you feel comfortable. Going to ask a favor. I do this every single time. Please go to iTunes, go to SoundCloud, go to Stitcher, wherever you can rate podcasts. Give us 5 stars or however many stars you think we deserve. Give us that rating so that we can bump up higher and higher and become more visible in those algorithms, those scary algorithms that I don't know a lot about. But I just know more numbers equals better in pretty much every context when it comes to the exposure game. So thank you once again. Looking forward to episode 100 and beyond. As Anthony would say at the end of every episode, go ahead and grab a game off of that shelf and let's make every night a game night.